Hello, educators of Virginia, and welcome to another episode of Deeper Insights, VASCD's podcast channel, where we get the privilege of talking with practitioners about things that are going on in schools and the real solutions to the problems we're all facing. Today, it is my distinct pleasure to sit down with Maria Ramadane, who is the Director of Teaching and Learning in Spotsylvania County. She's also a middle school coach and a leadership coach for Jimmy Casas. She is also going to be with us in Williamsburg at our annual conference. She is a concurrent session presenter, so make sure that if you haven't registered yet, make sure you register so you can come hang out with Maria and check out her session at VASCD's annual conference, Level Up, in Williamsburg in late November. Maria, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today. And yes, I'm looking forward to all of you in Williamsburg coming up to see my session, talk with me, believe in building community. So thank you for having me on today.
Awesome. I'm so grateful for your time. VASCD appreciates you giving up some of your valuable time just to talk with us today. I know we're going to get into it a little bit later about connection and relationships as we talk, but I think it's important for us as an audience to build a connection and almost a relationship with you. So when I ask how you are, I really want to know, and we really want to hear, like, given the what's going on in your world, whether professionally or personally, how are you? How are you showing up today?
I'm showing up as my authentic self, and I am a true believer in optimism and a true believer in hope. And that's how I show up every day. I believe that every day is a day to be great. It's a day to be better than the day before. And I work really hard to maintain that, truly to maintain that, and knowing that we all face challenges. And honestly, we know that our school systems are facing challenges right now. We know our country is facing challenges right now. But I try to stay in my realm of control, my circle of control and influence, and stay in that lane and keep a positive mindset and a positive outlook. So when I say I'm doing okay, I am doing okay, for real. and that's what I choose. That's where I choose to live.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate your authenticity. I also appreciate, like, we need leaders more than ever who maintain that optimistic, that hope, where it's sometimes we just need a beacon of light to just go towards. And so every time a leader really has an opportunity to shine that light, it is so good for all of us. As educators, as human beings, as all the hats that we wear. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for being a beacon of hope, and for keeping that optimistic perspective, because we need it. We're coming off of the hardest year ever. We are now well into the 22-23 school year, and in your check-in you mentioned we're all facing some challenges. So when you talk with teachers or see teachers, when you talk with school leaders or even colleagues or the folks you're interacting with, what are some of the challenges that our people are facing right now?
I think, and as you shared in the opening, I've been a middle school principal. I was a principal through the pandemic and transitioned into this new position as Director of Teaching and Learning, as well as being a leadership coach. So I have the opportunity to interact with teachers, principals, students, parents, variety of stakeholders. And I think that some of the challenges we face right now, we know there is a nationwide shortage of teachers. And that's not unique to one portion of the country. It's all over our country right now. And we know when that occurs, it requires those individuals in the current role to step up and take on additional responsibility sometimes, because when we keep students at the center of everything that we do, we're not going to let that slip. We're not going to let that drop. And ensuring that students are number one, it can be demanding. It can be demanding in regards to time, in regards to added responsibility. And those are things that we can't control time. We can't add extra time into the day. So I encourage our educators to do the best that they can in the time that we are allotted, but also make time for their own well-being. And we're also facing the challenges of students During some of the school closures across the country, we know that, learning looked different. And we know that we have students that may have had gaps before the pandemic, that may have even larger gaps after. And we're still making sure that we give students what they need. So you have all of those pieces coming together. You have the shortage, you have some of the learning that was impacted because of the pandemic. And it's working together to figure out, okay, how do we do this successfully and keeping our students in the center? And we also know that there's mental health challenges. We have that piece as well. And that's what really motivated me to focus in on how do we connect with all of our students? How do we build that connectedness, that sense of belonging? How do we ensure that our teachers feel connected to each other? Coming out of that pandemic and coming out of, there's a lot of isolation that took place. So for me, it's even more important at this moment that we connect with each other, that we build our communities, that we make sure every student is seen, and that we make sure our teachers and our staff are united and connected so we can successfully move forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, just recognizing what the challenges are, and it sounds like you believe deeply that the only way through is if we stay connected, is if we focus on those relationships. And we've seen teachers, gosh, it's been a challenge. 2+ years.
Mhm.
Our teachers and our school leaders who I let me say, how do I phrase it? Who navigated most successfully are the ones who focused on relationships and who focused on connection. And
Mhm.
so right now, as we're almost out of the woods with the pandemic. I think,
Mhm.
we can almost say post pandemic. I
Mhm.
think we're very close to being able to say that. But you talked about connection and relationship. Let's hone in on a word like belonging. Like
Mhm.
what do you think are some important things about making sure that all of our students feel like they belong?
I've thought about that a lot, and we talk about making sure everyone has a seat at the table and making sure everyone is included. But to me, it goes a step further because you can still be sitting at a table and not feel like you belong there.
Mm.
So it's how do we make sure that student or staff or in any relationship you're in, make sure that that person sees or that person is heard and seen and valued. I think that's how you make people feel like they belong. You hear their voice, you acknowledge what they're saying, you just engage in a way that says, I see you, I'm interested in you, I want to know who you are, I want to know what you need. It's not enough to say, come sit here, come sit at the table beside me. Now that you're here, let me know who you are. And to me, that's what belonging is. It's that sense of, yes, I have a place here. I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm valued, and I am appreciated for what I bring. That's to me what belonging means. And I think that if we look at just from a research standpoint, we know that when students feel like they belong or if they feel connected, they're going to do more. They're going to do more. If you have a staff member or a teacher or anyone, when they feel like they are connected and they belong, they're going to go that extra mile. So I think it's important for many reasons, and that's one of my passions is making sure everyone knows that they belong at that table. They just don't have a seat there.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you talked about the research, kind of drawing that direct line between that sense of belonging, but that direct line with the connectedness, straight line to engagement, straight line to improve learning outcomes. So I
Mhm.
definitely, appreciate that because not everyone feels like that's important. And
Mhm.
so when we take that approach, when we listen to the research and we
Right.
listen to practitioners with the experience and the expertise in creating environments where students, faculty, staff, community, parents, families, when we feel like we belong and there's that sense of connection, it's amazing how far we could take our organization. So
Mhm.
what does that look like? when you talk about belonging and when you talk about connection and when you talk about relationships, I think, I think I had an answer for that pre-pandemic. I think I had an
Mhm,
answer for that during the pandemic.
mhm.
What is is it any different from your perspective? Maybe first of all, is it any different? And if it is, or if it isn't, what does it look like now that we're moving forward after the pandemic?
I don't know if it looks different. I think we have to be more intentional.
Mm,
I think we have to be more intentional. And I'll share, I had a conversation with my son who's 21 years old, and I was just asking him, how do we reach all of our students? How do we look at some of our groups of students who are not performing at the levels we would want them to perform at, and some of our underrepresented groups? I asked him, how do we reach all of those students? And he asked me, how well do you know each
mm,
one of those students? And to me, that was a point to say, and this isn't new, and we know this, and we know research supports this as well. But after the pandemic or post-pandemic, however you want to word it, how well do we know what that student experienced? How well do we know what that student needs? And how much time are we taking to see that student? And I think from that point, and it wasn't a few months ago, it caused me to stop and reflect. I've always been big on relationships, and I've always known that, that is a necessity. We have to do that. But talking to a 21-year-old and having him pose that question, it really made me reflect as well. We're focused on a lot of different moving pieces, but at the center of all of those pieces is our students. And how well do we really know what our students need? And are we giving them a platform to tell us? We have lots of research and we have lots of books that are written by very educated practitioners and researchers. But what are students saying?
yeah.
What are they telling us they need? And until we can stop and listen, I think we're going to, I'll say it this way, until we stop and listen, we may get a little stuck
Mm.
because we need that voice. We need their thoughts. We need them to feel like they can come to us and say, you know what, I need this to be successful. You can help me by doing this. And we can guide and we can coach and we can direct, but we have to hear the voices of our students.
Yeah. No, I want to make sure I got it right. How well you know your students determines how well you reach your students. Does that
Mhm,
sound like it's a, I might have to
mhm.
tweet that out. That's good. That's awesome. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Mhm,
From the mouth of your son. I love it. So I want to live in that space for just a little bit, because one thing that has, as the executive director of VASCD, one of my jobs is to make sure that I'm putting programming in place that allows teachers and school leaders and division leaders to improve their craft so that they
mhm,
can meet the demands of modern learners.
mhm,
And what we've all seen is the universe around our schools has changed more in the past 2 years than it has in the past 20.
mhm,
And our kids are changing, our students are changing way more rapidly since March of 2020 than they
mhm,
ever did before that trajectory. And there hasn't been a lot of investment in professional learning in the past 2 years since we all learned how to
mhm,
transform. So, and I don't know if this is a question or just a statement, but what you made me really think about is there's no better way for us to figure out what adjustments we need to make than to talk to the kids, than to bring the students in and
mhm,
not ask a student to talk for a group of students. But I think what I'm picking up from hearing you say is that it's one kid at a time, because this kid is
mhm.
going to need something different. Their story is different. Where they're coming from is different. Where they're going is different. And so talk to that if you can. There's not a question in there, but it's just what you made me think about. And if you could elaborate that on just a little bit more, because I think it's important for our educators to hear. We hear one kid at a time. We got to reach
Mhm,
every single kid. It means
mhm,
something different right now, I believe, in
mhm,
2022 than it did whenever we started talking about personalization.
mhm, mhm. I think, and like we're talking about, it's every kid. How do you reach every single student? And it's a huge task. For me, I actually started interviewing some students. They're older, over 18, but 18 to 25-year-olds, and asking them to talk to me about what their public education or private education, K-12, looked like. What did it look like for you? What is it that you needed, that you received? What is it that you may not have received? And being open to that, being open to listening. It really started as a passion project for me. Um, and I want to grow that out into a documentary style, showing others what students are saying and how we can incorporate that into our day-to-day instruction, our day-to-day school operations. We can build that into our culture, our school culture, of what students have to say about their own education. They have to be invested in their education. And I think one of the best ways to have someone become more invested is to listen to them and to
Yeah.
design around what it is they need. Of course, we're educators and we know what research shows us and tells us, and that's very important. And it oftentimes aligns, but sometimes hearing the words of a young person, authentic and raw, the way they express themselves, is powerful. And I think there is power in giving them voice.
You just gave me an idea and I had to write it down. I might have to look I might have to look for students to be guests on our podcast channel. That would take some things to the next level. So thank you for that nudge and that inspiration. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So so there's something that our schools are facing right now. When I talk to school, the same question I asked you at the beginning about what challenges you're seeing. I ask our school leaders when I'm with them, or I'll ask our teachers when I have a chance to talk with them. And I, I won't say what they're saying specifically on the podcast, but
Mhm,
there's the word that I can use to maybe summarize is conflict. When there's conflict existed, we're trying to build relationships, we're trying to build connection, but either something happens and the the relationship breaks down, or there's some harm that's done, or there's damage to relationship, or if before I even have a chance to develop that relationship, we enter into our relationship through the lens of conflict.
mhm,
So I think maybe those are two very different questions. You could take whichever one you want, but the words
mhm,
conflict and damage to the relationship.
mhm,
What can we do in those moments to
mhm,
help preserve what we're after, and that
mhm,
belonging, that connection, those relationships, when we're after those things, but we have something that happens that causes a little bit of friction towards that. What are some things
mhm.
that we can do?
I think one of the things that we can do is listen, and I say actively listen. We need to hear the perspective of the other person. So one thing is listen, and then also reflect upon yourself. Why is this causing me conflict? Why? Look inside yourself and say, okay, this was a trigger for me. Why is it a trigger for me? Right? And understand yourself. And then listen to what the other person says. You don't have to agree on everything, but you can come to a point where you can say, I hear you. Again, I hear you. I see you. I acknowledge what you're saying. I may not agree with it, but I'm making a choice. I'm making a I'm sorry, getting my words tangled up, but I'm making a choice to say, I hear you, I see you, I listen to you, I acknowledged. And now we're going to make a decision collectively to move in whichever direction we decide to move in. But it's not me shutting down because there's conflict. It's not me um, turning a blind eye. It's me saying, what you said or did triggered me. It could have hurt me. I'm listening, and we're going to make a decision as to how collectively we move forward. But it can't happen. It can't happen. It's not quick. It's not
No.
a quick thing. It's going to take time, and it's going to take time and commitment.
And I think being able to hit the pause button on yourself in that moment,
Mhm.
because so many times it has happened to me where all of the blood of my brain leaves my prefrontal cortex and goes straight
Mhm.
to survival mode, and it's fight
Right,
or flight,
right,
fight, flight or freeze for me.
right,
And
right.
so, being able to recognize when it's happening and take a
Mhm.
really deep breath before you come right back,
Right.
and then to be able to kind of pull back and bring it to a sensibility, I think that's a skill. And the
Mhm.
unfortunate thing is it takes practice. And
It,
the more unfortunate thing is that in order for to be able to practice, it means it has to happen to you. So,
right. You have to be in the moment of it, right?
yeah.
But what I've learned, and this isn't something I made up, this is something I learned through leadership training. You have to acknowledge where you're feeling it first. Like
Yeah.
if I now acknowledge where it's triggering me first, then I can say, okay, I got it. I understand. I understand me. Then I need to listen and understand the other person. Then I need to make a decision. Okay, what is the decision going to be moving forward? But it was a powerful leadership training that I learned that from. And it applies in the classroom because sometimes students are going to trigger,
Oh,
and
yeah.
adults will trigger you, and you have to make a choice on how you respond in that moment. And especially with so many moving pieces, right now, people can, self included, get overwhelmed. And when you get overwhelmed, you're not your most rational self. So if you
Yeah.
practice a strategy to get through those moments, I think, at the end of the day, you'll be in a better place, in a
And it's
better service to the people in your life.
it's amazing how quickly it can escalate or how
Mhm,
quickly it can be over. You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like if in the moment that it happens, it's, instead of taking it to the next level, you do, and then all of a sudden, okay, the conflict is over. Now we're working
mhm.
through it.
Right.
So I won't say the conflict is over. However, you don't have to go straight to 10 in order to move it to a place. So I appreciate that. I just took a look at. I can't believe we're almost at 30 minutes already, Maria. This
Yes.
time has absolutely flown for me, and so I want to be very mindful of your time and also mindful of our listeners' time. But I want to give you a moment to. How can we connect with you? Are there any parting words or anything that's special going on for you that you'd love for us to hear about before we say goodbye?
Well, I want to continue on. Again, I'll see you all in Williamsburg.
That's
So
right.
I'll see you there. My session is relationships when creating communities within our school. So focusing in on relationships, community building. Also working on the project. It's called I Am Not Invisible. I Am Not Invisible, a champion for every student. And as I talked about earlier, I'm looking to talk to young adults and give them voice as to how we, as educators, can continue to create the best possible environment for every single one of the students that come across our path, or just the young people in our life in general, how we can set them up for success, because that's our ultimate goal. Set each student up for success. It may look different for different students, but at the end of the day, that's our common ground. You can reach me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter as Maria Ramadane. So feel free to reach me on Twitter. Shoot me a message. I'll get back with you. I love to have community in my life. I love to hear and understand and learn from individuals from all over the country, because we ultimately are in this together. We can't do it by ourselves. We cannot work in isolation, and our students deserve the very best. So thank you for the opportunity. Just remember, connect, make sure students feel like they belong, reach out, ask questions, and get to know those young people in your life. They are our future. I know it sounds cliche, but they truly are our future. And I know that together we can keep moving forward. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate your time, your experience, your expertise. I am inspired by you, so I know our friends listening in today will be inspired as well. So, thank you to everyone tuning in to Deeper Insights. It has been my pleasure to speak with Maria Ramadan, and we'll see you at the conference. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.